Hey everyone, welcome to another Shmup topic video. This is a topic that I have chosen, and it is one that I think is very, very important, especially right now in the wake of AGDQ in January and Gus surging more interest in the genre of shmups. And since that time, I've been seeing more and more people talking about, oh, I heard about Gus's run, or Gus's run kind of reignited my interest in the genre and stuff like that, which is really cool. But with that new surge of interest comes an issue that I have seen since starting doing content for Shmups, which is almost 2 years now, which is crazy to think, but I believe the Electric Underground's 2-year anniversary is very close. And so over this 2 years of creating Shmup content, I've noticed a cycle of behavior among many, many viewers where I call it the Shmup Fling. I actually had a podcast guest in the past where we sort of talked about this as well. It was McCormo, and he actually wrote an article about this, and he called it Shmup tourism, where people sort of tour the genre for a little bit, try out this and that for a while, and then move on with their lives. I like to kind of think of it in more of a relationship type terms, because maybe that's how my brain works, but and it kind of feels that way a little bit as a content creator, where you create podcasts or you create YouTube videos and stuff, and you get fans who come on and they're super into it for a while, like for a few months, right? They're all about it. You're like, oh yeah, I'm really like, they're really connecting with the genre. They're really getting into it. And then, bam, one day they're gone. Just like that, poof, vanished. And so it kind of feels like, especially as someone who interacts a lot with the fans and stuff, it kind of feels like it was like a one-night stand or something where it's like, whoa, okay, is that it? All right, I guess that's it. You know, Shmup Fling. That's what I like to think of it as. And so the question, of course, on my mind as not only a YouTuber, but I think as the genre itself is, how do we make people stay? How do we make people commit? How do we go from our Shmup one-night stand to being a long-term dedicated fan and player of the genre? And of course there is no one correct answer here, because I think, again, I like to think of it in relationship terms, where there is no one correct answer for taking your relationship from being a fling or casual to being, you know, a serious commitment or whatever you want to think of it as. You know, there is no one path that we all go down. But of course I think there are things that definitely help. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about, or trying to explore in this video, is what can we do to make people stay longer? What can we do to end this kind of fling mentality people have with shmups and sort of start a more long-term investment? And actually, this video is going to relate back to a video that some people feel is unrelated to shmups, but I think there's a lot to unpack there if you really give it a chance, which is my video I did about my channel and sort of my philosophy on my channel, what is going on with the channel. I think it's the name of the title or something like that. And the reason why some of those concepts tie into this is because I think shmups right now are not seen in a way that I think they could be seen that would be more beneficial for long-term engagement. So right now I think shmups are a niche, and they're sort of like I said, a novelty or something trendy to get into for a while and then people move on. That's kind of how shmups go, I feel like. And what actually appeals to a lot of people about shmups is the fact that they're niche and sort of trendy, and they're sort of underground a bit and stuff like that. Those types of things are what often brings people to shmups. It's not that they're here because they're looking for competition or that they're just that passionate about the games, which does happen, of course, and the people who stick around tend to have that, right? But there are a lot of people who kind of delve into shmups because they're sort of, you know, trendy and underground, and I'm just repeating my point here, but you can see where I'm going, right? And so how do we take people who have that initial interest and spark in shmups and get them to kind of settle into the genre more, to where even if they get more interested in other things, you know, like, for instance, there's sort of this mentality within shmups that I think is a little bit unbalanced, I guess you could say, where basically you're all or nothing. Many people are like this with shmups. I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing if you're this way, but I'm saying that this way of thinking cannot translate to large groups of people. So there are people who are die-hard, super super in-depth shmup fans where that's all they really care about is in terms of video games and those types of things. It's all shmups 24/7, which is super cool. I have no issues with that, of course. But the thing is that we can't really expect everyone who is a fan of the genre to reflect that mentality, and also all the content creators who create stuff for the genre to be exactly that way all the time, right? Because what we're wanting to do, I think, is to build a more balanced view of the genre, to where that's why I was talking about making this channel more of a lifestyle type channel, and why I think making shmups more of a lifestyle type genre could actually be really beneficial. So I think one thing that we can do to help people sort of commit to the genre more and make them come back over and over is not be so intense, right? That's why I think in terms of relationships, this is another good parallel, right? Where if you have a relationship and you're just hella intense, sometimes, that can be that intensity that lasts for a short burst of time and it's like overwhelmingly awesome and stuff. But then, once you start turning that intensity to years, like a year later, 2 years later, there's no way that level of intensity is going to continue completely healthily, right? And I feel like with shmups, it's sort of that way as well. What happens is people get into shmups and we're all pretty intense about the genre, so we're basically like, you need to be shmups 24/7 at all times. You need to be shmupping day and night all the time, which is really cool for a while. But then when people, just get locked into that, what happens is they go really deep into the genre, and then some people go hella deep into the genre to where they just go shmup crazy for even years, and then all of a sudden they wake up one day and they're like, what have I been doing? What happened to me? Where has this gone? I've seen this happen over and over and over with shmup players, where they get hella intense, they get hella deep. I feel like they go too deep, and then they kind of look back and they're like, what have I done? I have done this a few times myself, especially with my shmupping content, where I wake up sometimes and I'm like, whoa, I went hella deep for like 3 months of just pure shmupping content and stuff, and just thinking about shmups at all times, and it gets a little overwhelming. And so I think what happens is a lot of people then start to say, okay, enough's enough, and they get burned out and leave. And that's a pattern that we'll see over and over. And as you watch this video, think in your mind of examples of these types of people, which of course happens over and over, and it happens to many of our super players as well, where the super players get into the genre, they go hella hard, even for maybe a few years, they go real deep into it, and then they just walk away and step away and leave forever, or leave pretty much forever. Why does this happen? I think this happens because, and I've done this with fighting games myself, where I went hella, like really in depth in a fighting game and just played it at all times, and then it just became very overwhelming. I kind of did this with Melee, and then after a while I was like, okay, I need to do other things, and then you get out of it and you sort of fall out of it, and then it seems impossible to return to because you don't want to commit that same type of intensity and energy again, right? You don't want to throw everything else in your life on hold to get into shmups again, or to get into Super Smash Bros. Melee again, or a certain game or something. I think this is a pattern that happens over and over. It happens to me with fighting games quite a bit, and so coming into shmups, I had a little bit of preparation for that, being a Melee player and everything, where when you were a Melee player, especially a few years ago, it was Melee at all times. That's all you thought about, that's all you talked about, and all that kind of thing. But there are some differences between shmups and fighting games and the FGC that I think are key to point out, and I think are reasons why people tend to stick with FGC longer, and they tend to return to it more often than people do with shmups. For shmups, it really is this discrete point in people's video game interests where they get into them for a while and then they leave. I've seen this happen with people who were fans of the podcast and stuff like that. They get really into it for a while. They get, you're talking about shmups or getting into shmups, and then one day, boom, gone, checked out. And it's just kind of the end. And I think there's some reasons why that shmups tend to do this, where fighting games are a little better about it, and why I think we can sort of learn some lessons from fighting games, right? Shmups aren't perfect, and I think some things we can do to help people sort of commit long term to this genre is the first is to make it a little more balanced, a little less intense with how intense we are about the genre, to where we're just never open to any sort of like more social type things. It's hard to explain. Like, we don't take it down a notch, I guess is what I'm saying. We're always pushing further and further to the extremes, which is really awesome and impressive because that's how you get amazingly high level gameplay. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? I think that if we start mixing in a healthy balance of our hardcore side of things and then our casual side of things. Here's a good example, like with my stream, right? So my stream for a year and a half a while ago was just me grinding Dodonpachi at all times, right? Every day, 3 hours a day, going for that 2-all. And so that created sort of, I wouldn't say it created an expectation because I had like no viewers back then, just a very few. But it created, in my mind, sort of an expectation of what my stream needs to be, which is really hardcore, just intense grinding for hours and hours and hours. But at the same time, I've also noticed that when I would do certain streams where I would just fire up a game and do some survival clears and stuff, people coming into the genre connected with that a lot more because it was more accessible, it was more relatable, it was frankly more watchable than me grinding the same minute in loops for an hour and a half. And so that creates sort of a divide between what you expect out of my stream, right? Some people might expect me to be pushing for higher Dodonpachi scores, which I will be doing, and then some people expect me to sort of have it be a little bit more like survival, gameplay oriented, interacting with chat, more of a viewer interaction experience. And so I've been thinking about this, and really what I want to achieve with this channel, with my Twitch, and what I kind of want to achieve with Shmups is a healthy balance where some weeks I'm going to be grinding those streams, right? I'm going to have streams where I'm just grinding Dodonpachi for hours and hours, and you get to witness me going full Shmup basically, and doing save state loops of 1-minute sections and just like the really nitty gritty stuff of Shmups that's really hardcore. But then I'm also going to do streams where I'm going to be just chatting, or I'm just going to be doing 1cc clears of different Shmups, trying different Shmups out, watching replays. And so I think creating that balance of content is really good. And I think the tendency that we view is that people who make Shmup content should go more and more hardcore and just keep pushing hardcore and more hardcore. And I know this because whenever I create more like generalized content, sometimes it gets good reception, sometimes it doesn't, but I think it creates a little bit of fear among some of the players, or maybe some players start to dismiss me as, okay, Mark's going casual mode now, he's not a serious shmupper anymore. And that's what I think, that's an expectation that I think we need to start getting away from, because I think that's what is causing a lot of issues with player retention, is that we are not letting people breathe a little bit. And so that's why I want Shmups, I want to kind of promote Shmups as a lifestyle genre, just like fighting games. What makes fighting games so easy to return to for a lot of people and sort of always be a part of their life, even if they're not a competitive player, which most fighting game fans are not. I've basically fallen into that category myself, right? I used to be hella competitive, going to tournaments, thinking about winning. That's all I cared about. But now I'm Mr., content creator shmupper, right? I literally cannot go to fighting game tournaments like I used to and grind out hundreds of hours of practice and fighting games and stuff anymore, because I'm doing that in Shmups and I'm creating content and stuff like that. But I still play fighting games. And so I have gone from that hardcore sector of fighting games to now I'm sort of becoming a little bit more of a casual fan. I still go to locals and stuff, but that's basically now my sort of fighting game repertoire is I try and get good at the games, try and do well online, but the furthest I'm really going to go is maybe go to a major if it's close to me once a year, maybe less, and then just go to locals with my friends. And that's basically it. That's all I need to do with fighting games, and I'm happy. I'm satisfied now. The grind for being like, a serious competitive player to me is just sort of over. That part of my existence is over. But I don't just leave the genre entirely, and that's what I think is happening with shmups. And that's what I think the key difference is that shmups are not seen as a lifestyle type genre, even though they totally are, even more than fighting games, to be honest. Being a shmup player should be more of a lifestyle type thing rather than this discrete portion of your life, because this genre is all about repetition, it's all about time and procedure and repeating stuff over and over and stuff like that. It's not about bursts of interest in short amounts at all. Like, that's not really going to get you super far in shmups anyway. It's a genre that requires time, right? And so that's what I think is we're shooting ourselves in the foot a lot with this, though, kind of our attitudes about shmups, is that we push and push so hard that we just push people away. We just push people out because we don't give people a chance to breathe. We don't give people a chance to sort of integrate the genre into their lives a little more. And then we create all kinds of different, barriers between each other socially and stuff like that, right? Where the casual players are beneath certain types of players, and certain types of players are way too hardcore, like myself, and don't give nice reviews to Nintendo Life articles and stuff like that. So I think if we can just sort of try and meet each other a little more and try to be more open to the idea of being balanced, where people who are just casual fans of the genre, right? They just credit feed or play the games from time to time, or maybe they just collect the games. If we can somehow entice these people to start taking the more hardcore type of content a little more seriously or a little more openly, right? They start checking out, well, I don't know if Stunfest is happening anymore, but checking out like Shmup Slam or any of our sort of super play events, checking out the replays, checking out the video index, checking out the leaderboards, and those all are things that need to be worked on. But having them sort of take a little bit of an interest in that, just like how fighting game fans, people who just play the games casually in single player mode even, or just play it with their one friend or whatever, a lot of these people will still check out stuff like EVO. They'll still check out their local fighting game tournaments. They'll still check out, even if it's just watching the videos and stuff, right? There's still that sort of connection there with the casual fans. And EVO even has a thing now, I believe, I'm a little behind on EVO's updates, but I think a while ago they had a thing where people could go to EVO as purely as spectators. I think that's been a while, right? Where for a while, I think it was, to go to EVO, you had to enter, and that was like the thing. You entered and played, and then you watched the finals or whatever. But now people can straight up go to EVO as spectators, never actually played the games before, and so I think that's what one crowd that Shmup fans need to start opening themselves up to a little more is the spectators, the casuals. We need to sort of embrace the fact that there are going to be people who never really care that much about playing for score, but something about the genre connects with them in some way. But on the other hand, too, we can't also be so hardcore that when we get, we'll get people who get invested in the genre, that we just keep pushing them further and further to the extremes, to the point where they just burn out completely, and we kind of give them a hard time about, you should be playing this way or that way. I think it's just basically just like in a relationship, we don't want to make it too intense where people are feeling trapped or feeling like they need to create distance. You want to encourage people to get more into the genre. That's definitely something I do try to aim for with my content, right? Is to create an army of hardcore shmup fans who feel like this genre is the best and better than all the other genres and the most important. Of course, that's my goal. But I can't be so overbearing that I'm just pushing people away and So sometimes I can be overbearing, but you know what I mean. Like you got to keep it, on the level, right? You got to keep it somewhat reasonable. And so I think that's what a lot of the things we need to improve upon. And then there's, of course, there's other things that we need to improve on just logistically, right? Like we need to get away from the farm. We need to create our own sort of better leaderboard system, which is a project I still need to get working on more, just kind of with the whole life, what's going on in the world situation. That's a little bit hard for me right now, but that will happen soon enough, I'm sure. But just stuff like that, foundation type stuff, but also I think our culture needs to change a little bit, where we're not always excluding each other or pushing, creating different crowds or pushing away people who get into shmups. Oh, because I love shmups because they have weird zany stories, or I love shmups because I'm really into pixel art and shmups have great pixel art, right? We need to embrace these people. We need to find somewhere to put them, basically, right? Where we don't have to push them away and say, well, you're not really enjoying shmups correctly. Playing shmups is all about getting high scores and competing. That's how I personally like enjoying shmups. That's what attracts me to them. But I can't say that this is the definitive way to enjoy the genre or the whole point of the genre, because that's just limiting what the genre could be doing overall. And basically, we need to get away from this whole niche, Twin Galaxies mindset of, it's a little boys club or whatever, old man's club. And I think what we need to try and do is we need to basically work on finding places to put everyone so that we can have a more healthy ecosystem overall. So we get people who are into shmups because they like to collect them. We need to find somewhere for them to be and to, like interact with us. And then we need people who get into the genre because they love retro games and they love the way the shmups look, or they love shmup music or shmup pixel art and stuff like that. We need somewhere to put these people. And then people who get into the genre because they want to compete and they want to beat other people's scores. We need somewhere to put these people, we just need, and then content creators too, right? Like people who get into shmups to create content. We need somewhere for these people to go. As far as creating spaces where we're all sort of in this together, but we're not working against each other, which is, I think, what we have been doing a lot, is just butting heads and working against each other, slandering each other. You can see this with different shmup audiences, right? There's not a whole lot of overlap between different shmup crowds, and when you go from one to the other, it's like going to a different table in the cafeteria, right? Where one click may accept you, one click won't accept you, those types of things. So that's my idea anyway, and I hope this video can kind of convey some of these things, where going forward I want to try and sort of promote Shmups as more of a lifestyle type brand, I guess you could say, where we're in this for the long haul, and the goal is not necessarily just to get people to break world records or to create high scores, which is awesome, and I'm really excited what's happening with stuff like what Kiwi's doing with Mushi and what Mog just achieved with Ketsui. I love that stuff, that's some of my favorite stuff about shmups, but at the same time, I also can't just start focusing only on that and excluding people who get into the genre because they want to create, their own indie shmup, or they get into the genre because they want to create their own pixel art and those types of things, or collect them and talk about PCBs and talk about Sega Saturn games and stuff like that. Just trying to broaden everything out. So anyway, thanks so much, and I'd like to thank my patrons: Dingo, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Brian Shiver, Double Vision, Depths 20XX, Dunpeel 2064, EC 2151, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Gus, Kiwi, Jacob Spring, Jake Ryan, Neon Daggers, Scentmore Apps, Sarah Thumbs, Joe Angelo, John, K, Quentin, Maz, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Okla Kugels, Omcall, Rysosis, Segumo, Young Money Swee, Plasmo, Utakaya, Bahoy TV 100, Malaise, Mayhair Calendrian. Thanks for watching.